Here I got examples of 3 scientific notation problems. We got 2 multiplication and 1 division. I'm going to walk through with you on how to solve these. These are a little bit tricky because you'll notice you'll have some numbers that are not in scientific notation, multiply with numbers that are in scientific notation. And anytime you have a negative exponent when you're dividing, it gets a little bit tricky. So please forgive my sloppy handwriting. It's difficult to write on this iPad nice and neat. We're going to start with the first one. We're multiplying 2 numbers together. Whenever you do that, you want to multiply your numbers. So I'm going to do that in my calculator right now. I got 7.78 times 6.24. And I get 48.5 if I want to use the correct number of sig figs, because I got 3 significant figures in each one. So that should be a 48.5. And it will be times 10. Anytime you multiply, you're going to want to add your exponents. So negative 7 plus negative 8 will get you negative 15. The problem is this is not scientific notation because of this number right here. So this number, this decimal, needs to be a 1-digit number, not 48. We're going to actually change it to 4.85 times 10 to the something. We'll figure out what that is right now. So I'm taking this number and I'm changing it. When I am changing it, I am making it smaller by moving that decimal. So I'm going from 48 to 4, roughly. Whenever you do that, you want to kind of balance it out. So when you make that number smaller, you're going to make your exponent bigger. We're making this smaller by 1 decimal space, so we're going to make this number bigger by 1 number. So negative 15 plus 1 is negative 14. This is our final answer right here. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. The next one is tricky because I don't have a number in scientific notation, but I want to change it to a number in scientific notation. So I want to move my decimal here, right here, to 1.2. So I have 1.2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 10 to the 5th. However, we have to determine, is this a positive 5 or a negative 5? And here's how I determine that. A small number gets a small exponent. But a big number, like if it was 120,000 or 1,200,000, a big number gets a big exponent. Because we're looking at a small number smaller than 1, we're going to have an exponent that is a small number smaller than 1. So that will be negative 5 as our exponent. We're going to multiply that by 5 times 10 to the 2nd power, and that'll get us our answer. So I'm going to multiply my calculator, 5 times 1.2, or 1.2 times 5. I want the correct number of sig figs, so that's going to give me 6.0 exactly, because I have 2 sig figs. I want my answer to be with 2 sig figs. And remember, what do we do when we multiply our numbers? What do we do to our exponent? We're going to add to get that exponent. So it's 10 to the negative 3. That's our final answer. It is in scientific notation, so we can technically stop there for that problem. Next one is going to be a little bit more tricky because we're dividing. It's still the same idea though. So in these previous problems, because we're multiplying, we multiply the numbers. But in this number, we're dividing, so we're going to divide the numbers. So I'm literally going to divide these two numbers, 3.09 divided by 8.1. And because the number with the smaller amount of sig figs has 2 sig figs, I'm going to just use 2 sig figs in my answer. So that gets me 0.38 times 10 to the something. Now I'm going to use a different color just to show this part real quick. We need to figure out what that exponent is for 10. So we're going to take this 5 and this negative 10, and I want you to look at the previous problems for a moment. When we multiplied, we added the exponents. When you divide, you're going to subtract the exponents, except you're not just subtracting 5 minus 10. You have to keep in mind it is 5 minus negative 10. That's what you end up with. So we actually get times 10 to the 15th. But technically, that's not our final answer. We need our final answer in scientific notation, 3.8. I am making this number bigger, so I'm going to make my exponent smaller, times 10 to the 14th.